Hey guys, so this is literally the fourth time I've tried to record this and everything keeps interrupting me. So here goes nothing. I will not be here in the morning to read Scythe to you guys because I have to go to my classroom all day and pack up and clean up and close it down. So I wanted to go ahead and read it to you tonight and send it to you so that you can listen to it when you have time. So here is where we left off. Don't forget that they think that Citra killed Scythe Faraday and are trying to blame her. And she just came from the revival center and is recovering in some cabin with Scythe Curry. And that's kind of where we left off. And then and it also talked about, they were saying that they thought Citra was the Scythe apprentice that they were talking about, but it was actually Scythe Curry that she's like, it's me that they're talking about, not you. It was an old journal entry. So when Faraday was still a junior Scythe, all of 22 years old, he took me on as an apprentice, said Scythe Curry. I was 17 and full of righteous indignation at the world that was still heaving in the throes of transformation. Immortality had been a reality for barely 50 years. There was still discord and political posturing, even fear of the Thunderhead, if you could imagine that. Fear of it? Who could possibly be afraid of the Thunderhead? People who had the most to lose: criminals, politicians, organizations that thrived on the oppression of others. The point was, the world was still changing, and I wanted to help it change faster. Both Scythe Faraday and I were of similar minds about that, which I suppose is why he took me on. We were both driven by a desire to use gleaning as a way of hacking through the thicket to open a better path for humanity. Oh, you should have seen him in those days, Citra. You would have only seen him old. He likes to remain that way to keep himself from being tempted by a younger man's passions. Scythe Curry smiled as she spoke about her former mentor. I remember I would wait outside his door at night, listening to him as he slept. I was 17, remember, childish in so many ways. I thought myself in love. Wait, you were in love with him? Infatuated. He was a rising star who took a wide-eyed girl under his wing. Even though in those days he only gleaned the wicked, he did it with such compassion. He melted my heart each time. Then she sobered a bit, looking a bit sheepish, which was a strange expression for steely Scythe Curry. I actually worked up the nerve to go in his room one night, determined to go talk to him. Oh, I made a silly excuse for going in there. I was coming to get his empty glass or something like that, but he didn't believe me for an instant. He knew I was up to something. I couldn't look him in the eye. I thought he knew. I thought he was wise and could see see my soul, but at 22 he was just as inexperienced in such matters as I was. He had no clue what was really going on. Then Citra understood. He thought you wanted to hurt him, and she just wanted to go tell him, like, I'm in love with you, but he thinks she was trying to hurt him. I think all young women are cursed with a streak of unrelenting foolishness, and all young men are cursed with a streak of absolute stupidity. You didn't see my obsession with him as love. He didn't see my obsession with him as love, but thought I meant him harm. It was, to say the least, a very painful comedy of errors. I suppose I can understand how my advances could be misunderstood in that way. I do admit that I was an odd girl, intense to the point of being off-putting. I think you've grown in your intensity, Citra said. That I have. In any case, he wrote up of his paranoid concerns about me in his Scythe journal, and then tore it out the next day when I broke down and confessed my love and was with eyeball-rolling melodrama. She sighed and shook her head. I was hopeless. He, on the other hand, was a gentleman, told me that he was flattered, which was the last thing any teenage girl wanted to hear, and he let me down as easily as he could. I lived in his house and remained his apprentice for 2 more awkward months. Then, when I was ordained and became Honorable Scythe Marie Curry, we parted ways. We would nod and say hello to each other at conclave. Then, nearly 50 years later, we both had turned our first corner and were seeing the world through youthful eyes once more. But this time, the wisdom of age was on our side, and we became friends. Citra grinned. You broke the 9th commandment. So they kind of became like boyfriend-girlfriend, but they're not supposed to be boyfriend-girlfriend, so they were like hiding it, and so, yeah. We told ourselves we didn't. We told ourselves we were never more than just friends. 2 like-minded people who shared a lifestyle that others simply couldn't understand, the lifestyle of a Scythe. Still, we knew enough to keep it a secret. That is when he first showed me the page he had written and torn out in his youth. He had held on to the ridiculous journal entry like a poorly penned love letter never sent. We kept our friendship and relationship secret for 7 years. Then Prometheus found out about it. The world's first supreme blade? Oh, it wasn't just a regional scandal. It was a worldwide implication. We were brought before the global conclave. We thought we might be the first Scythes to actually be stripped of our rings and hurled out of the Scythedom, perhaps even gleaned. But we had such stellar reputations. Supreme Blade Prometheus saw fit to give us a less severe punishment. We were sentenced to 7 deaths, 1 for each year of our relationship. Then he forbade us to contact each other for the next 70 years. I'm sorry, said Citra. Don't be. We deserved it, and we understood. We needed to be made an example of for other Scythes who might not think twice before they would let love interfere with their duty. 7 deaths, and 70 years later, many things had changed. We remained old friends after that, but nothing more. Scythe Curry seemed a mix of many emotions, but she folded them all away like clothes that no longer fit and closed the drawer. Citra suspected she never spoke of this to anyone else, and probably never would speak of it again. I should have known that he would never throw the page away, Scythe Curry said. They must have found it when they cleaned out his things. And Xenocrat thought he was writing about me. Scythe Curry considered that. Perhaps, but probably not. Xenocrat is not a stupid man. He may have suspected the true nature of that page, but the truth didn't matter. He saw it as a means to an end, a way to discredit you in front of the respected Scythes like Scythe Mandela, who heads the bejeweling committee, and thereby ensure that Scythe Goddard's apprentice would get the ring instead of you. Citra wanted to be angry at Rowan for this, but she knew whatever else was going on in that head of his, that was not his doing. Why would Xenocrats even care? He's not one of Goddard's miserable crew of Scythes. He doesn't even seem to like Goddard, and clearly couldn't care less about me and Rowan. There are more cards in play than can be read at the moment, Scythe Curry said. All we know for sure is that we must stay out of sight until we clear you of even the suggestion of wrongdoing. Just then someone came to the door, startling Citra. She hadn't known anyone else was in the cabin. It was another Scythe, by the look of her, probably the one who owned the cabin. She was shorter than Scythe Curry. Her robe had an intricate pattern that was red, black, and turquoise. It seemed less of a fabric and more of a tapestry, intricately woven. Citra wondered if the Chile Argentina Scythes were robes that seemed not just handmade, but lovingly made. The woman spoke in Spanish, and Scythe Curry responded in kind. I didn't know you spoke Spanish, said Citra after the Chile Argentina Scythe had left. I speak 12 languages fluently, said Scythe Curry, with a bit of pride in her voice. 12? Scythe Curry offered up a mischievous grin. See, if you didn't know as many languages when you were 219, See if you don't know as many languages when you're 219. She took the tray from Citra's lap and set it on the nightstand. I thought we'd have more time, but the local Scythe Authority is on their way. I doubt they know you're here, but they're sending scouts to every Scythe's home with DNA sweepers, figuring we must have some local help. So we're on the move again? Citra swung her feet off the bed and planted them on the ground. Her ankles ached, but only slightly. It was a good kind of ache. I can walk myself this time. Good, because you'll be doing a lot of that. Scythe Curry glanced out the window. No one was coming yet, but there was tension in her voice that wasn't there before. I'm afraid I won't be coming with you, Citra. I am here to clear your name. If I am to clear your name, I need to go back home and rally as many Scythes as I can. But the local Chile Argentina cite them. What can they do to me? I'm breaking no commandments. All they can do is wag their naughty finger at me and refuse to wave goodbye as I drive to the airport. So when you get home, you'll have to tell everyone the truth about the journal entry? I don't see what other choice I have. Of course, Xenocrats will claim that I'm lying to protect you, but most will take my word over his. Hopefully that will embarrass him enough to withdraw the claim. So where can I go? Asked Citra. I have an idea about that. Scythe Curry reached into the drawer and pulled out the rough woven burlap frock of a tonist. You want me to pretend to be part of a tone cult? A lone pilgrim. They're very common in this part of the world. You'll be a nameless, faceless wanderer. It wasn't the most glamorous of disguises, but Citra knew it was practical. No one would look her in the eye for the fear of getting an earful of tonist twaddle. So remember, it's like the weird culty religion that's going on that doesn't believe in, like the revivals and all, like immortality and stuff. She would hide in plain sight and come home just before winter conclave. If Scythe Curry hadn't cleared her name by then it wouldn't matter anyway. She wasn't about to spend her whole life in hiding. Then the Chile Argentina Scythe burst in again, this time more than agitated than before. They're here, Scythe Curry said. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, pressing it into Citra's palm. There's somewhere I want you to go, someone you need to see. The address is on the paper. Consider it the final part of your training. Citra grabbed the frock, and while Scythe Curry hurried Citra out of the room and to the back door, the Chile Argentina Scythe went to a weapons wardrobe and quickly filled a sack with concealed blades and firearms for Citra, the way a worried mother might fill her child's bag with snacks. There's a public car in a shed at the bottom of the hill. Take it and head north, Scythe Curry said. Citra opened the back door and stepped out. It was cold but bearable. Listen to me carefully, said Scythe Curry. It's a long trip, and you're going to need your wits about you to get where you're going. Then Scythe Curry went on to give Citra the instructions she needed to make the journey of many thousands of miles, but she was cut short by the sound of a car pulling up in the front of the house. Go, as long as you keep moving, you'll be safe. And what do I do when I get there? Scythe Curry met her with a hard gaze that revealed nothing but added importance to her words. A tonist might call it resonance. When you get there, you'll know what to do. Then they came to an all-familiar pounding at the front door. Citra bounded down the snowy hillside, careening off of pines in her way, the aches in her joints reminding her that she was still a few hours shy of complete healing. She found the shed and the public car was there just as Scythe Curry had promised. It powered up for her as she got in, and it asked for a destination. She wasn't foolish enough to give it one. North, she told it, just north. As she sped off, she heard an explosion, then another. She looked back, but all she could see was black smoke just beginning to rise above the treetops. Dread began to fill her. A man wearing a robe similar to the one Scythe Curry's friend wore burst through the trees into the road behind her. She saw him only for an instant, then the road took a sharp turn and he was gone from sight. Only after the public car had wound its way down the mountain pass and was on the main road did she look at the paper that Scythe Curry had given her. For a moment it felt as if her bones had spontaneously re-shattered, but the feeling passed and settled into a jaded resolve. She understood now. When you get there, you'll know what to do. Yes, she most certainly would. She stared at the piece of paper for a moment more. She needed only to memorize the address because she already knew the name. Gerald Vondergans. The Thunderhead had spoken to her, and now so had Scythe Curry. There was a long journey ahead of Citra, and at the end of it, much work to be done. Citra couldn't glean, but she could exact vengeance. She would find a way to deliver justice to the Scythe Killer one way or another. Never was she so thankful to have a sack full of weapons. Let me see how much. I'll keep reading. All right. This was a matter too delicate to be left to the Blade Guard, and although Scythe San Martin detested being used as a mere enforcement agent, he also knew that catching this mid-American girl would be a feather in his cap. He knew the girl was there even before he knocked on the door. His associate had an over-enthusiastic junior Scythe named Bello who had turned on the DNA detector and picked up traces the moment they stepped out of the car. San Martin drew his weapon and he approached the cabin, a pistol he'd had since the day he was ordained, given to him by his mentor. It was his weapon of choice for all the gleanings and extension of who he was. And although he didn't expect there'd be anyone to glean today, it made him feel whole to have it drawn. Besides, gleaning aside, it might be necessary to incapacitate someone, although he had been warned not to render anyone, especially the girl, deadish, because that had created the very fiasco they were now attempting to resolve. He pounded on the door and pounded again. He was ready to kick it in, and when none other than Scythe Marie Curry herself came to the door. San Martin tried not to be starstruck. The Marquise de la Muerte was well known throughout the world for her early achievements, a living legend everywhere, not just in the north. There is a doorbell, or did you notice? She said in Spanish, so perfect it threw Scythe San Martin off his game. Are you here for lunch? He stammered for a moment, deepening his disadvantage, then recovered as best he could. We're here for the girl, he said. No sense denying she was here, we already know. And he gestured towards Bella, whose DNA detector was pinging in the red. She glanced at San Martin's raised pistol and humped. As such authority, he found himself lowering it almost involuntarily. She was here, Scythe Curry said, but not anymore. She's on her way to the Antarctic resort for some skiing. You might catch her flight if you hurry, though. The chilly Argentina Scythedom was not known for its sense of humor, and Scythe San Martin was no exception. He would not be made a fool of, even by one of the greats. He pushed his way into the cabin, where the chilly Argentina Scythe, whose name he could not remember, stood as defiantly as Scythe Curry. Search all you want, said the second Scythe, but if you break anything... She never got to finish the thought because Bello, overzealous as ever, jabbed her with the jolt baton and left her unconscious. Was that really necessary? Chided Scythe Curry. It's me you have a gripe with, not poor Eva. On a hunch, San Martin went out the back door and sure enough found tall footprints in the snow. She's on foot, he told Bello. A puerte. She couldn't have gotten far. Scythe Bello launched into pursuit like a bloodhound, heading down the snowy hillside, disappearing into the trees. San Martin went back inside, hurrying to the front door. The road wound down the hill. If Bello couldn't catch her on foot, perhaps San Martin could head her off in the car. Scythe Curry, however, stood in the doorway, barring his way. He raised his weapon again, and in response, she pulled out her own, a handgun with a stubby muzzle wide enough to fit a golf ball in the barrel, a mortar pistol. He might as well have had a pea shooter against that thing. He didn't lower his weapon, no matter how outclassed it was. I have special permission from our High Blade to fire on you if necessary, he warned her. And I have no permission from anyone, said Scythe Curry, but I'm more than happy to do the same. They held their standoff for more heartbeats than felt advisable. Then Scythe Curry turned her gun aside and fired out the front door. An explosion blew in the front windows of the cabin, and shockwaves knocking San Martin to the ground. And yet Scythe Curry, still in the doorway, barely flinched. St. Martin scrambled to the door to see the blast from the mortar pistol had turned his car into a bonfire. Then she fired again, this time blowing up her own car. Well, now, she said, I suppose you'll have to stay for lunch. He looked at the two flaming vehicles inside, knowing he'd be a laughingstock for his failure today. He looked at Scythe Curry, her steely gray eyes, her calm control of the situation, and he realized he never stood a chance against her. There wasn't much he could do but glare at her in heartfelt disapproval. Very bad, he said, wagging a finger. Very, very bad. I love her. She's so awesome. Okay, so this is a journal entry from Scythe Curry. Yet even in dreams, I often find myself gleaning. I have one dream that reoccurs far too often. I'm walking on an unfamiliar street that I feel I should know, but I don't. I have a pitchfork, which I never used in real life. It feels awkward. Its awkward tines are not well suited for gleaning, and when it strikes, it reverberates, giving off a sound that is something between ringing and moaning, like the numbing vibration of a tonus bident. There is a woman before me whom I must glean. I jab at her, yet the pitchfork fails to do the job. Her wounds heal instantaneously. She's not upset or frightened, nor is she amused. She is simply resigned to stand there, allowing me to futilely attempt to end her life. She opens her mouth to speak, but her voice is soft and her words are drowned out by the fork's ghastly moans, so I never hear her, and I always wake up screaming. So that's the rest of chapter 31. Thursday, I'll read 32. We're getting to the end. There's not that much left. So you guys have a good day. If you need anything tomorrow, you can email me. Otherwise, I'm going to be in my class working. So see you guys later.